Okay, so I'm not at all sure that everybody can see or hear me, but let's see what Kirsten says in the background. So is it going okay? Is it working okay, Kirsten? Okay, so good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. And obviously, because you signed up for this webinar, this is Tim. And as you probably know, I'm one of the 5 Tergar instructors. And I just want to start by saying that it's wonderful to have a chance to get together and talk about these kinds of things. And particularly at this time, when things are so challenging for all of us, that there's never been a time that perhaps calls us to consider these questions. The questions of who am I? How am I? How do I work with this world that I perceive? How do I work with this world in such a way that is balanced and clear, that is connected, that has insight and understanding? So this is what this particular time is calling us to do. And today, I think that I would like to start with just a moment of meditation practice. So let's just take a few minutes to gather ourselves. And as we say in the tradition, now that our body is on the chair or the cushion, now we can bring our mind to the body. So just take a moment to gather yourself. And again, take a moment to appreciate the fact that we're interested in these kinds of questions, these critical questions, that we have an understanding to base our life and our approach on, and that we have friends like those who are here to share the path with. And now just let mind completely relax, open, completely at ease. Mind is open, it's aware. Anything can come and go in this kind of mind, but we can just open up to the whole experience without trying to create something or block something, just open and at ease. Now we can take a moment to set our sort of aspiration for this gathering, for this day, for our life altogether. And this could be unique to each person, but perhaps we could aspire that what we do in the next hour, what we do today, what we do this weekend, may it benefit us to become more balanced and clear. May it benefit others who want exactly the same thing that we want. And may we be some positive agent in the well-being of those around us, those in our family, those in our community, all around the world. Okay. So I'm going to give some reflections for a few minutes, and then we're going to have a chance to engage with some dialogue, some questions, which would be really wonderful. So I've been asked to talk about the whole kind of issue of patience and how to deal with what's going on in the world today, and again, in our families, in our lives, in our heart, in our mind, how to deal with this with a sense of balance when everything is as topsy-turvy, upside down, perhaps threatening. How to navigate these waters with balance and clarity. This seems to be the question of the moment, and frankly, I think it's the question of our life altogether. So there's so many ways, there's so many avenues into this. Every single teaching of the Buddha had some relationship to what we might want to talk about today. We don't quite have enough time to go through the whole thing, but there was a suggestion that we talk about patience. So patience is a beautiful, beautiful topic. It's one, as you know, most of you know, it's one of the 6 transcendent activities, or 6 paramitas. Patience means a number of things, but in short, patience means the ability or the willingness to not react when provoked, to not react when things don't go our way, to not react. What I mean by reacting, I don't mean responding. I mean to not react reactively with an afflictive mind when things don't go our way, when things are frightening, when they're uncertain. Patience means to take a long view. So patience is really the sort of ground of a meditative mind, a long view, a steady view, an open view, a flexible view. So of course we could just say, then we should be patient. And of course, it's wonderful to be patient. Being patient allows for a quality of equanimity and peace for oneself, and it creates a similar environment of peace around us. And within that basic sort of stable environment, then we can work with the world effectively. So this is a patient mind. But it's not as if we're just kind of holding on to ourselves, holding on for dear life with some sort of patience and waiting for it to go away, whatever the situation is, to go away. Patience is much more subtle than that. It's much more beautiful than that. It's more profound than that. Patience is based on understanding, an understanding of who we are, how we are, an understanding of how the world is, and then how our response to that world is. Patience is wise. It has wisdom to it. It has heart to it. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how we understand this patience, what we base our sort of present experience on. And I wanted to talk about this through our understanding of the various aspects of the path of meditation. Some of this also with patience, and also with our meditation life altogether. This is based on how highly we value this endeavor. How highly do we value the training in patience, the training of our mind, the training of our heart, the training of our wisdom. If we value it highly, then it's easy. It's not easy in that it's still a very difficult journey, but it's easy in terms of our application or our engagement with it. We have joy in it. It lifts us up. It's so beautiful. And then with this kind of enthusiasm, then the difficulties actually are part of a vast sort of profound endeavor. So there's a beautiful, very short sort of teaching metaphor that illustrates this. And it goes like this, that sometime in the 16th century, someone was walking through the woods of England, and they came across someone with a hammer in their hand and sweating and swearing and beating on a big boulder, a big rock. And the person says, "What are you doing?" And he said, I'm building a building brick." Okay. So then the person walks down the lane a little further and comes across another person with a hammer, flailing away at a big boulder, but they were beaming. And the person says, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm building a cathedral." So everything rises or falls on how high on the shelf we put something. So if we put the training of our mind, the training of our heart, learning how to work with the world and connect with the world, if we put this high on the shelf, then we're enthusiastic. It's like wind in our sails. This sends us along the path with a basic sense of delight, of joy, and enthusiasm. It doesn't mean that it's not easy, but we take it on with energy and enthusiasm. When we value something, we imbue it with meaning and depth. And what could possibly be a more profound endeavor than this endeavor of how to finally tame our mind and to explore the qualities that are there, and upon discovering those qualities, benefiting others? It's so interesting because in most cultures, it's a cultural thing that it's a good idea to go and work out in the gym or whatever you call it. And so the idea is that somehow we're supposed to get lean and trim or whatever, and it's a good thing to do. And everybody believes it. And so you go and everyone is going away and they're sweating, but they're happy doing what they're doing. Why? To look nice. And yet we'll spend hours and hours and hours, buy special clothes, go to a special place, sometimes hire someone to help us, a coach to help us. So this is the power of believing strongly in something, to have great confidence in something, that thing is wholesome and it's good to do. So with that, I'm getting a message. Someone's already asking a question. So from this point of view then, what I would like to talk about just briefly is the sort of key components to this path that we share, and to pull out what are the key insights, the key truths, the key skills that we develop in these various aspects of the path. If we have clarity about these, again, to the degree that we have clarity, that we value them, then the path becomes incredibly meaningful to us. So, for instance, when we begin to work with meditation practice, that just the willingness to sit down on our cushion suggests a whole bunch of assumptions. And the principal assumption is that there is this thing that is called mind. This is this sort of discovery that meditation, as you know, it means to become familiar with. When we begin with the principles of meditation, we begin to become familiar with this, the whole landscape of mind. The landscape of mind itself as a sort of basic, open, stable quality of awareness. Mind as the surface agitated quality that Mingyur Rinpoche calls monkey mind. And the proposition that it is possible to tame our mind, this agitated aspect of mind. There's a proposition, we don't know it in practice right now, but that if you sit and you follow your breath, or you do whatever simple meditation practice we do it longer than we could imagine doing it, that something is shifting, something is moving. We have faith that this agitated quality of mind can begin to settle down to some degree. And then on the basis of that, we have an opportunity to begin to directly experience the basic sort of nature of how we are, of who we are, this fundamental sort of ground of who we are. Sometimes it's referred to as our basic goodness, as our true nature. So what we discover at the sort of basis of meditation is that there is this thing called mind. And on the basis of how our mind is, the complexion of our mind at any given moment, then that determines the world we live in. It's very straightforward. If mind is agitated, we see an agitated world. We know this. If mind is relaxed, we see a world that is inviting, that is safe. If mind is warmly predisposed, then we walk in the world and we see a world of friends, people that we can relate to. This is the power of simple meditation practice, to allow mind to tame, to begin to find its own natural balance, its own natural spaciousness, and also to touch into its own basic quality. So this is the basis of however we want to engage the world, ourselves, our life altogether, and situations like this pandemic, and now all the racial upheaval in the United States. The basis of how to work with this, we work with at the very fundamentals of our meditation practice. We understand that to create a spacious and balanced world, that on that basis, we'll see the world in a way that is more balanced and clear, more accurate. And on that basic clarity, the balance here and the clarity of perception, then we can work in the world and engage the world in a way that is clear, that is appropriate, that it is in line with what the world needs, because our mind is clear. So this is the fundamental, this is the sort of baseline of everything we do. And this is, as you know, the purview or the subject matter of Mingyur Rinpoche's Joy of Living Level 1, working with mind. It's really beautiful. So then on the basis of that, when we begin to develop a quality of spaciousness and sort of stability here, then what we begin to discover completely naturally is a more relaxed and intuitive relationship with ourselves. That there's a sense of warmth that begins to generate. And this again is simply based on meditation practice. When you spend enough time with someone, you naturally begin to understand them. And when you understand them, you become warmly disposed. So this begins to radiate, begins to develop here. And as this develops, this warmth, this basic friendliness develops, we relax further. As we relax, we stop holding on to ourselves so tightly, which is completely appropriate. But when we begin to start to relax, we can loosen, we can soften, and all of that energy of holding here begins to open up and move out, to radiate out as a natural sense of warmth and connection towards others. We naturally and spontaneously want others to experience the kind of warmth and ease that we've begun to experience. And that naturally begins to radiate out, just like a mother naturally and spontaneously caring for a newborn. We become interested in others. We become as interested in others' monkeys as we are in our own monkey, because now we're just beginning to become interested in the whole process of peace and lack of peace, of well-being, of connection, of warmth. So this is what we discover as we settle down, and this is, as you know, is what Mingyur Rinpoche talks mostly about in the Joy of Living Level 2. fundamentally, we discover that we're all in the same boat. We all do what we want. Sorry, we all do what we do because we want to be at ease and or we want to be free of grief and suffering. Now, the problem is because we're agitated and mind is not clear, mind is not flexible, mind is not ascertaining the world accurately, that when mind is not clear, then what we do to find that ease and that lack of suffering is normally spectacularly off base. We want so badly to be happy and at ease, and we're so bad at it. This is why this whole journey of what it means to be human is so poignant, because we all have the same complete, wholesome, good nature. We all have the same desire to reconnect with that nature and experience the kind of peace that we intuit is possible for us. We all want the same thing. We're all afraid of being hurt, being insulted, being left alone, of losing. We're all the same. So when we begin to warm up and to develop a relationship with ourselves, and this again just happens as a natural byproduct of meditation, at the same time, we develop a natural, intuitive, and sensitive relationship to others. And this is the birth of compassion. This is the spark of compassion. And then connecting with others in this way, we connect with our sort of collective kinship, the fact that we all are all brothers and sisters. And it's on this basis that we, particularly at times like this, that we stay connected, experiencing how we are during this pandemic, all the uncertainty, the fear, the agitation, all of that, experiencing this intimately as we do, and as we do in our meditation practice. Now we begin to naturally understand that that's the way everybody is. So this, what seems to be unwanted experiences, this becomes the sort of rich, fertile ground for the growth of connection, the growth of compassion, the growth of care, the growth of affection for others. This is the organic basis of the golden rule, you could say. A deep connection with others, with ourselves, actually creates a bridge towards others. So again, this is one of the first things we discover when we begin to work with the principles of taming our mind through meditation. And again, this is what Mingyur Rinpoche talks about in The Joy of Living, level 2. Then, as mind continues to stabilize, and as the warmth of our heart also creates a world in which we feel more balanced, more spacious, more affectionately connected, now we begin to have the opportunity to really work with perception. How is it that I create this world? Why is it that I feel affectionately predisposed to these people now, and a week ago I was angry at everybody? How do I create that world? So this is the discovery. This is when we begin to talk about insight or wisdom, the question of how the world really truly is. Now that we've tamed mind, we've warmed and opened ourselves up, now it's time to take another look and say, are things the way I took them to be before? Is the world the way I assumed it to be? Am I the way I've always assumed me to be? So wisdom is this connection between how I understand the world and how the world truly is. If our understanding is confused, then we're always missing the world that we walk into. And that creates suffering, dis-ease, creates trouble for us. When we have this quality of clarity about how things are, then what we think things are and the world we see, these match, and we come to peace. So wisdom is both the cause of peace for ourselves And it is also the generator of compassion. And the reason is because when we see how just like us, other people are missing reality, then we naturally feel connected. We naturally want to care for them, to help them sort of wake up, as it were, to see how the world truly is. So this quality of wisdom, or seeing the truth, this is what sets us free. And what do we see? When we look out, when we look clearly at ourselves, at situations, at the world altogether, what do we see? We see that it is exactly the way we're feeling it to be right now. It's constantly changing. It's completely unfixed. We can't find it. There's nothing we can hold on to. There's nothing that is permanent, solid, singular, that we can hold on to, both here and out there. And at first, this also can be very, very, very uncertain. It's a little strange, actually. Everything is moving. Everything is constantly impermanent. So it itself, this insight, as we move along the path itself, can be somewhat disquieting. But when we keep working with it, when we keep coming back to it as an experience, when we ponder it, when we contemplate it, when we check it out, when we learn about it, then this quality of open, unfixed, unfindable, constantly changing, when we really begin to align ourselves with that, actually we take refuge there. We understand that that is the nature of reality. And it's that understanding, with that understanding, then we can navigate these rough waters that we're in right now. We understand that everything is impermanent. Everything is constantly changing. So where there wasn't a virus, now there is a virus. Where it was absolutely raging and completely threatening, that also is changing. So with this wisdom, to have the long view, this is where patience come in. Wisdom allows us to have the long view of seeing that, understanding that what we see now, even if we see it very clearly now, we also understand that this too will change. That this is the nature of things to always be changing. This pandemic, for instance, is not for us or against us. This is just the coming together of causes and conditions, and we have this virus. This is simple cause and conditions. It's not because we're unlucky. The world is not trying to assault us or insult us. This is just the way it is. This is the nature of reality. So wisdom sees the nature of reality. And when we align with that, then even if things are really, really difficult, we maintain a sense of clarity and balance. So this is why truth, or sort of understanding the nature of things, begins to set us free. And then as we continue with this exploration of wisdom, of insight, what we also begin to see is that there is a quality about us that we were teasing in the Joy of Living Level 1 when we begin our meditation practice. There's a quality about us that is always there. There's a quality about us that sees the winds of change going up and down. There's a quality about us that itself, even though we can't find it, seems to always be present, always be balanced, always be spacious. This quality is our basic nature. Mingyur Rinpoche refers to this as timeless awareness. It's a quality of simple knowingness that is beyond knowing what is present, what is in the past, or what might be in the future. It's underneath all of that. This timeless awareness is the discovery of the Joy of Living Level 3. It's the discovery of the path altogether. And then the rest of the path, then, from now until enlightenment itself, or whatever you want to call that thing, is an increased and familiarization with this basic timeless quality of who we are, this part of us that actually never changes. Even in a world, an uncertain world that is constantly changing and unfindable, there's a quality of presence here that oddly enough is kind of findable and doesn't change. So this further both sets us completely free now, but also sets up an environment here where we can not only work with our world effectively, but we can begin to work with the world in a way that is deeply connected, empathetically connected, compassionately connected, and then more than that, completely engaged. That this clarity and warmth naturally wants to engage the world in the same way that a mother naturally wants to move towards her baby whenever the baby is in discomfort. This quality of clarity and warmth now wants to move towards the very pain and suffering and uncertainty that we used to recoil from. Now we want to move towards it so that we can relieve that from others, just as we had wanted it to be relieved from us. So we can talk perhaps more about it in the question and answer, but this is the basis of not only how we navigate these difficult waters, but we navigate them with a way that is inclined towards others and towards benefiting others, this sort of compassionate resolve. So for this compassionate resolve, again, we need patience, we need a long view. When we engage the world in whatever way we can, we need to take a long view. We need to take the view that things don't always work out the way we want them to. This is called a quality of equanimity. We have to engage the world with a willingness to know that maybe we don't know it all. Maybe we've got something wrong. A kind of humility in terms of our engagement. We need to engage the world with a quality of courage that it's not going to be easy. Working with suffering wherever we find it, much less on this global scale, is always difficult. So we have to have courage. We've got to be willing to sort of put ourselves out. But there's nothing else to do. Nothing else seems to make any sense. To hold into our own kind of cocoon and to just watch out for our well-being. Of course, it feels good. It may feel safer, but it also feels empty. It feels like there's something missing. So this is where we naturally and spontaneously want to engage the world, whether it's this climate thing, whether it's the huge racial upset here in this country and in most countries, in whatever domain we feel that we have the interest, the inclination, the resources, and the skill to engage, we naturally want to engage. So that's the impulse for compassionate engagement. And this is, in many ways, you could say, this is where this culminates. The training in the balance and spaciousness, taming of mind in the beginning, opens us up to warmth here and connection and warmth out there. And then a closer look and we see the nature of reality. So this is where this ends up now, is this compassionate engagement in the world. And this is how we live our life. It's a challenging life. We don't know if how much benefit we can be. But one thing we know is that it feels rich. It feels meaningful. It feels like what a full human being does. They engage the world. So on the basis of that richness, that sense of meaning, then we continue on with a kind of clarity and a certain sense of delight. So maybe to wrap up, this is how patience turns into delight, actually. And it's that delight, that energy, that enthusiasm, that joy. That's what is the wind in our sails. And that's what keeps us going down the path of benefiting others, but also down the path of continuing to work with our own heart and our own mind so that we can stay ahead of the game, so that we can develop the qualities and the skill and the clarity so that we can benefit on the scale that we aspire to benefit. And so again, we continue along the path with enthusiasm and joy. So those were some comments, and I think there's questions, but I'm not entirely sure. Okay. There's so many great questions here. And I would invite Kirsten to tell me the important ones. But so there's a question here. Christoph asks, would you speak to the link between what you're saying with taking refuge? So this is what it means to take refuge. Taking refuge means that we place our trust in something that we feel is meaningful, something that we feel is true. So this is what we take refuge in. We take refuge in the possibility that mind can be tamed, mind could be free. We take refuge means we place our confidence in that. And if you're a Buddhist or if in any tradition, we also then, along with that, place our trust in whoever exemplifies that quality, the quality that we're looking for, whoever it might be. It could be Jesus Christ, it could be the Buddha, it could be somebody you met a month ago, so that you place your trust in that. Then refuge also involves then having placed your trust and your enthusiasm for this endeavor that we're talking about. Then we take refuge in learning, because we want to learn how to do this. We place our trust in the quality of learning, and we invite that. And then finally, we take delight in, and we place our confidence in those who are doing this with us. So this is the quality of the community, or the Sangha. So here's a question from Ina. It says, could you talk about Dharma practice in the context of social engagement, especially in light of the protests that are happening all over the world? So I think I did that. And really, I think that what I want to share about that is that it's completely natural, spontaneously natural, to want to be engaged, to not only want to be engaged, but to engage. For instance, if you're a mother, you're in your house and the kids are out playing, and you hear someone crying, you immediately run out the door to see what's going on. This is engagement. This is social engagement. In the same way, when we become affectionately connected with the world, we want to move towards suffering. We want to engage the world. So this is a little bit about engagement. There's so much to say, and there's so much to say that many others could say much better than me. Really quick question from Andrew. Is structure important along the path, like getting up at regular early hours and setting times to meditate? Absolutely. If we want to do something, particularly if that endeavor is profound and vast, then to that degree, we're going to set up a life that creates a circumstance here that allows us to do what we want, what we aspire to do. So if you want to be, just really quickly, I live in a small town in the mountains of Colorado, and the claim to fame for our town is that we have produced more Olympians than any city in the world, they say. So it's a particular kind of ski jumping and Nordic skiing that we train in here. And the young people, they have a special schedule at their high school. They train for 4 hours a day. They love it. For what? Only 3 people are going to get medals. And so again, in an even more important endeavor, we do need to train and learn to structure our path in a way that is aligned with our aspiration. So if, for instance, if we were really, so that's enough about that. So I think I've got questions coming in from all over the place. Let's see. Now I can't even remember what app. Oh, it's WhatsApp that Kirsten was asking me questions. When we want to help, we can do it awkwardly or too directly, and perhaps disturb and go the opposite of the goal. Should we try to help anyway? This is why we train. This is why we spend time on the cushion, why we learn, why we tame our mind, so that our capacity to help is enhanced, our clarity, we know how to deal with situations. That's just natural intelligence that arises when we tame our mind. So of course we want to help, but we need to engage, to try to help when we have the skill. Not to give you a horrible example, but if you wanted to become a neurosurgeon, you don't pick up a knife and start advertising. You go to school and you train and you steady your hand and you clarify your understanding of neurosurgery. And that's what we need to do on the path. Here's a question from Dana. I have a situation. I discovered this awareness and I'm very fond of it to the extent that I neglect my other many responsibilities. How can I find balance? The balance is compassion. The balance is placing your meditation practice all together in a large vision, you could say, of benefiting beings. This is how we find that balance. So we meditate so that we can develop a quality of peace and clarity here. Then that peace and clarity then becomes extended as an active, engaged compassion. Okay, let's see what Kirsten has to say. How do we have a long view and try to be in the present moment? So again, long view is again this quality of having a vision, of having an aspiration of where this is going. And then within that, then you do whatever meditation practice you're doing. So you have the long view and then the training, the engagement. So in the same way, if someone is in a car race that goes for 24 hours, the long view is that they want to win the race. The immediate view is that they're driving the car. So this is the way it is with us. But the important thing is to have some quality of vision. In other words, where this is going. Great. A lot of people say that they lose the practice when a disturbing emotion arises. How can I deal with afflictions without blocking or rejecting them? So this, of course, has to do with this question of working with afflictive emotions, and everyone knows what afflictive emotions are. Anger, pride, jealousy, grasping, attachment, aggression, ignorance. The Buddha said that there were pride, jealousy, that there were 83,995 more of these. So in other words, there's just any way that afflictive emotions can arise. Affliction simply means this agitated quality. And why is it important to work with these afflictive emotions? Because first, because they're afflictive, in other words, they disturb us, we want to have peace. And when disturbance is there, it's completely natural that it blocks our peace. So we want to figure that out. That's the first thing. The second reason it's so important to work with afflictive emotions is because when we run with the same afflictive emotion again and again, it creates patterns. And on patterns, then we engage the next situation with that patterned approach. The next one, we know how that goes. And so this is what we talk. This is when we begin to talk about laying down karmic habits. It's the same. We know this about Western psychology, that if we react with something one time with aggression, 10 times with aggression, pretty soon aggression becomes our default. So we want to work with it in that way as well. But ultimately, the reason we want to work with afflictive emotions is because they form a kind of weave, a kind of cover that covers this basic nature, that covers our fundamental wisdom, clarity, peace, balance, richness, goodness, wholeness, connectivity. These afflictions somehow block that quality. And so this is why we want to work with them. But really quickly, now that I've said a lot about that, there's a lot to learn about working with afflictive emotions. But the first thing is to begin to loosen and balance and cool out your mind through meditation. And then when something arises, some sort of affliction or whatever arises, we can hold that within a larger space of awareness, to place that affliction, that concern in a kind of environment of care, rather than letting it drive us or rejecting it altogether. We can see it in the same way as if our 3-year-old came and they were crying to us about something that had happened on the playground. We don't push them away. We don't tell them what to do. We just hold them and listen to them. So this is the essential skill of working with emotions. And then that opens up deeper levels, again, of compassion and of wisdom when we do it, when we can do that. Okay. Can I ask about happiness and bliss? What are the differences and similarities? What are the causes of happiness? Well, let's see. We have a few minutes left, but it's an important question, because we all say we want to be happy. And then if we don't know what it is, then we're all just chasing our tail. Here in the meditation tradition, happiness and bliss, these are not emotions. This happiness here is not happiness as opposed to unhappiness. Happiness here means discovering that part of ourselves that is unchanging, that feels real, feels genuine, feels connected. So happiness here means developing a relationship with our sort of fundamental nature altogether. Happiness here is a basic sense, because we're connected with that, a basic sense of kind of well-being, a kind of confidence, because we know where that is. Even though everything on the surface is changing, we know where that place is. This is happiness. This is a sense of basic well-being. This kind of happiness we can have even if we're in the middle of a fight with someone. The fight is happening on the surface, but the basic well-being, the happiness, is unchanging, because we've discovered something that is unchanging and something that is not dependent on the world. So this is true happiness, actually. It's unchanging. It itself is unchanging. Okay, let's see what Kirsten says. Yes, this is the question of the moment. I'm having difficulty being non-judgmental to those who are racist, destructive, those who have racist, destructive viewpoints. How can I feel more compassion for their confusion? Yeah, so this is the kind of $1 million question. So, and I think what Lisa is getting at is that until we have some quality of balance, then it's extremely hard to be a change agent. It's extremely hard to get people to listen to you, particularly people on the other side of a divide, because that's who you're wanting to change, right? When you're with people who agree with you, that's not the problem. The problem is working with people you want to change. So we need that balance and clarity to be able to know how to appropriately engage, when to engage, what our resources are, who the players are, and how to do it in a way. If we go into a situation with aggression, then people will naturally pull away from us. They won't listen to us. We don't listen to people who are angry at us. So there's a difference here. And again, I am not an expert in political or social engagement, but there is a difference here between the kind of anger, the healthy anger, when you see that something is wrong, that something is off, that has to be made right and has to be made right right now. That is wisdom. That is an active kind of, sometimes we could even refer to it as a kind of wrathful compassion that has energy. So this is important. This rouses us for the time, for the moment, and it calls us to do something. But now that we're roused, now the question is, how do we pull this off? And we can be judgmental about attitudes that people are carrying, of course, because that's what we're trying to change. So of course we're judgmental about it. We've made a judgment that it is bad, and that's why we want to change it. But what we need to do is we need to be willing to be open to the humanity of the other side, to believe, to understanding that they get to where they get with the same quality of confidence that we've gotten to where we've gotten. It doesn't mean that we both are right, but it means the other person, we need to give them the dignity of understanding that they're not crazy. They've gotten to where they've gotten on the basis, just like us, on the basis of our conditioning, our cultural sort of mentality, our education, our life experience, all of these kinds of things. People get to where they are methodically. It's not just a decision that they're going to be on the right or the left of some divide. So we have to have that fundamental regard in the same way that we ask them, the proverbial other side, we ask them to be respectful to us, to listen to us, to care about us. If we don't respond in the same, if we don't offer the same, then there's no way that there's ever going to be any change. I think this is probably a little bit obvious, but it's good to have a chance to repeat. So here's a question from Akash. I have a question about meditation. When I sit to do meditation on awareness, at times my head starts to feel very heavy to a point where I have to stop. So Akash, I feel your pain. So it's good to stop. Generally, there's a couple causes for this heaviness. There's a number of causes. One is we could simply just be tired. And when if we're trying to do something, particularly if we're trying to hold or focus or push our meditation in a certain way, it's going to create more fatigue, a sense of heaviness. So beyond the most important instruction then is to loosen up our practice altogether, and to do it for short times. In other words, if when you're practicing for a while you feel heavy and dull, then practice for a shorter time, and then get up and freshen yourself, and then practice for a short time. This is what Mingyur Rinpoche refers to as short times, many times. So this is important, and to take our practice with a proper sense of precision but lightness. So there's a lot to learn about that. So how can we know when the open awareness practice is successful? This comes from Nicholas. How can we know when the open awareness practice is successful? Really good question. I think we know that it's becoming successful when there's just a little bit more space in our mind, in our life. We have a little less attitude about everything. There's this little sense of warmth. And the rarest of all qualities, a tiny little sense of humor about ourselves. So the whole thing with meditation is not to focus it on something or to refine it in a certain way. The whole thing about meditation is to discover the natural spaciousness, openness, fluidness, flexibility of mind. That's where we're going here. So we know that our awareness practice is becoming successful when there's more looseness, there's more relaxation, a sense of naturalness. We can feel that. We know when we feel it. There's a natural sense of somehow being connected here, being connected there. Mingyur Rinpoche often uses the example of a flagpole and a flag, that right now we're like the flag going like this, but over time, when we work with the principles of meditation and awareness, we become related to the pole itself, and that doesn't move. So the outer circumstance could move, even our moods could move a little bit, but basically there's a sense of being centered, being balanced, being connected, and that brings us a quality of confidence and quality of deeper relaxation. So that's how we know when awareness is working. Really good question. Let's see if there's any last ones. Patience is a sign of strength. Very true. Excellent. There are moments when I feel tremendous joy. How do I work with this? Share it with others. Don't try to hold it as a possession, and let that joy inspire us to go further and work more deeply with others so they might experience the same joy that we're beginning to experience. Also, let it go. As soon as you experience it, just let it go. And when it comes back again, wonderful, and let that go as well. And there'll be a time, just like the practice of awareness, there'll be a time where there's a little taste, there's a little sense of joy all the time. And this you develop by experiencing it, letting it go, letting it go, letting it go. And pretty soon it begins to sort of flavor the atmosphere altogether. And there's just a little bit of sense of lightness, of upliftedness, of energy, of enthusiasm, just a little bit present. That's real joy. That's real joy. It's so beautiful. So I think that's the top of the hour. And I've been trained just enough to know that if a webinar is 1 hour, then we better get off in 1 hour or there will be hell to pay. So again, in closing, I want to thank everybody, each of you, for being part of this call, to be interested in this kind of thing at all. I do know that we're getting, every time we open up our computer, we're bombarded with guidance and tips and hints and instructions. And so the fact that you're interested in what I might have to say, I appreciate that as well. And we have an opportunity here right now, when everything is as uncertain, as up in the air as it is right now. We have a remarkable opportunity, a proverbial once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And that is, one, to use this time to further our understanding of causes and conditions, of mind, of heart, of connection, and how to work with the world, how to work with our world, to use this to sort of up our interest and our engagement with all of this. This is a rare moment. So I really encourage everyone to take this as a reminder or an opportunity to continue to work again with the principles of our meditation, of our study. I really invite you, please, in whatever way you can, engage with others. It might be engaging with others in your community, engaging with others on the streets, or whatever you find meaningful and intelligent and wise. Please do that. And finally, to appreciate the fact that we have this life at all, however difficult it might be right now. We have this life, and with it, an opportunity to work with mind, to develop the kind of peace that we intuit is possible for us, that we know is possible, that we yearn for, that the absence of which we suffer over, that we use this life to please continue working with these principles, and we'll discover this. And on the basis of that, or along the way, then we can also, please, let's be connected with each other, kindly and affectionately disposed towards each other, even those who are on the other side of a social, political divide. And so all of that is to appreciate this opportunity, what we know, the community, our training, and this remarkable opportunity, or this remarkable moment in time. And so finally, Kirsten is in the back. She's helping with this. It never would have happened without her. And all the people that are making, the many, many people in Tergar that are making all of this web streaming stuff possible. And finally, I want to just publicly appreciate all of our teachers collectively. Each of you have your own teachers. I have my own teachers. We're here under the sort of guidance of Mingyur Rinpoche, so to appreciate Mingyur Rinpoche and all he's offered and has created for our benefit. And finally, thank you everybody, and be well.